Hello. So we're doing the common symbols, motifs, themes, and other literary devices in the comedy of errors. And so what we're gonna do for the protocol, or doing so we made an infographic. So we're gonna have that pulled up, and then we're gonna also have a discussion sheet pulled up where we can see our
the quotes
we can see the quotes that we picked for our passages for the protocol, which we're going to do after we just describe the main symbols, motifs, and themes, and also metaphors and other things like tone and wave also.
And the protocol we picked was the save the last word for me protocol.
Yeah. Alright, so Jack, you want to start?
So
are we gonna explain some of the things on the website first? Like some of the symbols that we're not talking about?
Well, no, we're going to talk about mostly all of them.
I'm going to talk about both my symbols.
Yeah. So the first theme that I thought was really important. It's not necessarily depicted because there's obviously a lot of suffering, but one of them is love. So I had the image of a heart because it represents a lot of the love and affection that's seen in the play. The first instance was seen in Aegeon when he loved his children so much and he loved his wife so much that he risked his life. Maybe not knowing this, but he still had a lot of risk at hand when he participated in the illegal commerce to go and find them. Another one is the Antipholus of Syracuse, and how he deeply loves or shows a lot of affection toward Luciana throughout the play, which is clearly seen how he shows like a lot of affection to her. And another one can be seen with Abess with her children and husband, and she has been and how even though she after she had gotten separated from her children and parents, I think that one of the reasons, a really important reason that that kind of shows love is how she became a nun, which is like a really safe. It was like she was like the head of all the nuns, which is like a really safe job just in case any of her children would come back or anything like that, because if they did, then she'd have the ability, or she wouldn't put her life at risk at all. So I think that was a really important part as well.
I think that love was shown a lot in the story and it showed that there were a lot of different relationships too. Like there was showing the love between Abyss and her kids, Aegeon and his kids, the Antipholus.
I think there was also bad love though, not healthy love too, Mm-hmm. I don't know, just between, I don't know,
Adriana and Luciana, they're sisters and they were fighting, but it's just because they love each other.
Yeah.
So yeah, I thought that was really important, even though there's obviously a lot of suffering in the story too, because we'll get to that.
So are you gonna read your quote?
No, we're gonna do that that's gonna be
So what are we saying?
I'll refer back to my love part when I get to my quote.
Alright, so what's next? The Cosmic Irony. Are we gonna read all these?
Yeah, we'll just read. Yeah, no, Cosmic Irony is pretty short though.
Okay. So a literary device that is shown in the Comedy of Errors is cosmic irony, and cosmic irony is it's another word for fate basically, and that fate and destiny is controlled by outside forces. And so I think that the cosmic irony is shown all through the story basically, because in the beginning of the story I think fate split them up, and then all of the plot of the story happened, but then fate brought their whole family back together and brought the twins back together to find their long lost brothers, and then they found their mom, so fate brought their family all.
Yeah, definitely. And it came together at one point. So.
Mm-hmm. That's a shorter one, but it's a literary device.
Okay.
So the next theme was suffering, and that is just it's really. I think that's the big one for the story,
definitely.
because so many things happen. Yeah, so many things happen that just causes people to suffer, people getting separated and all that. So, Aegeon and Amelia were suffering a lot of loneliness just because they were separated from each other and their children. And this is when Aegeon describes his terrible life to the Duke when he's put on trial for this commerce which he broke. And it's just he's so determined to find his kids that when at first he was sentenced to death. He was so like put down by it. So I mean, he was pretty like sad about that. And then, when he went through that, it displayed how he was undergoing complete suffering and trauma from his life, which is the first and most extreme point of suffering in this play. And then Luciana also suffers in not having her husband. Antipholus of Syracuse suffers from self-isolation and a sense of wanting to be reunited with his long-lost family, because I think Antipholus of Syracuse was more determined, I guess, to find his family. Like, he actually wanted to find them rather than Ephesus.
Yeah, I think
Antipholus of Ephesus, who kind of just like laid low and like wasn't really motivated to find them. And then the Dromios, who I mean are physically getting beaten, which like I mean that's just pretty obvious for suffering.
There was like both emotional and physical suffering.
I think that Adriana
there was a lot of
suffered
suffering.
too, you know?
Oh yeah.
Because she thought that like her husband was cheating on her, so
And because of her like appearance issues, like
so yeah, she was suffering from that too. I feel like almost every single one of the characters in the book had some sort of suffering shown.
And I think that everything added a sense of complexity to the play by making each character have a hill to get over in order to reach like happiness and joy. Because without the suffering, they wouldn't have to like get over anything to get to the part of them like being happy and reunited with their family.
Yeah. There was a lot of suffering.
Who wants to enact
Okay, so that's mine.
Yeah, that's the one.
So another literary device that was shown in the Comedy of Errors is anagnorisis, and it's when, so the definition for anagnorisis is when the main character identifies their true identity, leading to the resolution of the story. And I think that like the biggest part when this happened was at the very end. And so basically this is when Aegeon and Amelia, who is a Bess, and the Antipholus.
So Amelia is a Bess, right? Like,
Yeah,
It is,
That's
yeah.
just like
It
that's
is.
like they're like the same person. And that's when Abess, Aegeon, and the Antipholus of Ephesus were all at like the town square, and then at the very end, the Antipholus of Syracuse and the Dromio, they all like met up at the same time. And a lot of people thought it was just like witchcraft, but then they all discovered that they just like found their long lost
It was almost
brother.
like fate too.
Yeah.
It was
And
like
that's why
connecting. It was connecting back.
It connects to the
yeah.
cosmic irony, yeah.
Because it was all confusion, and then it all went back to like,
And
just
then
like coming all together,
yeah.
which is kind of like surprising. I
And
guess.
then they all like figured out their true identity, that like they had a twin brother, and that they like found their lost blonde brothers. And then Aegeon just like discovered that Abess was his wife and that he like all his kids. So they
There's
all
a lot of like discovery.
yeah, and then it led to the resolution of them being a family again and ending off the story basically.
So next, I think the symbol of the gold chain plays a huge role in the play, and I definitely see it as a symbol, but I mean it's more of a literary symbol because it's an actual
Yeah, it's like-
object
yeah, it's a
that's being
material, yeah.
used in the play. It's not some like thing like gold chain that's not actually a gold chain.
Yeah.
So I definitely think it's the focal point of the story, and without the chain, there wouldn't be a plot because that's really like the climax and just like how everything comes together. And
If there was no like problem with the golden chain, the story just would have been all the Dromios running around.
Yeah,
like that's
exactly.
basically it.
So I think that the chain is a symbol of bondage in the sense that it brought the family together, because without them having to search for the gold chain and all the confusion, they wouldn't have been brought back together. So it also served as a symbol of love, as it was very rare and considered a jewel. And I think that's just like what?
Nothing I'm saying.
Like love in the story is like hard to find, I think, until the end when they finally found it. So I think that's also how
Yeah,
the gold
like-
chain
yeah.
like acts as is
Definitely,
love.
like true love was very hard to find. I feel like in this story.
for sure. And
It also was like a kind of like a roadblock, kind of like.
no, yeah, for sure. Like I feel like Aegeon could have gotten to the Dromios and all of them a lot faster if that whole thing hadn't come up. Even though it didn't really involve him that much, like I don't know. I just feel like it would have been a lot easier.
It complicated the story even more than
Yeah.
it was in the beginning.
So yeah, I just think that it symbolizes as the coming together of two things,
Yeah.
and it's a chain. So I feel like chains, just in society and like biblical context, it's just like holds things together, and that's just how it works in the
Yeah.
story too, of holding the story together and holding
Yeah,
the
I know.
family together when they come together.
And it was also literal kind of because like a chain holds like two things together usually, and like at the end of the story, it was like the two Antipholos, or like Antipholos of Syracuse and Ephesus came together, and like they were like kind of like two people, and then it was like Abes and Aegean who came together, and then it was like the two Dromios who came together. So it was really symbolic of like the end of the story because it kind of like was what led to the end.
Brought them all together.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, that's it.
Okay.
All of our like symbols kind of like go together, like especially with the literary devices, they all kind of like
They all go with each other.
They all go with each other.
Like if one of them wasn't there, it could have affected the whole story.
Yeah, exactly.
So Jack.
Yeah, sure. So throughout the entire story, there is a lot of allusion. There's like 3 or 4 examples of allusion to, or like referencing to other popular forms of art or literature. There's a lot of referencing to the Bible, and one of those includes the fall of Eve, which is a really common story in Genesis.
Wait, did you say what the theme was? Did you say that it was allusion to the Bible?
It's not necessarily a theme. That's just like a literary device.
Okay, well, so just talking about the allusion to the Bible.
Yeah.
Because I think you forgot to say that.
Oh yeah, no, yeah. So I'm talking about the allusion. I'm talking about the allusion to the Bible. So it was basically what was seen in the fall of Eve to the serpent in Genesis, as she was tempted, and it wasn't necessarily the same thing in this situation, but it's still reference to the punishment that women bear, as this occurred when Eve took the bite out of the apple, and then they got taken out of the Garden of Eden, which which is seen in Genesis, and so this is seen in Act 1, scene 1, line 46, when it's written, "The pleasant punishment that women bear," and this refers to the fall of Eve, and it also refers back, like this happens when Aegean is talking about when his wife endured a lot of pain because of a pregnancy, but it resulted. She took in a lot of pain, and it was like a punishment that she had to bear for it, but it still resulted in something beautiful, which is her children. And I think another reference that can be made to the Bible.
Yeah, there were definitely like a lot of
Yeah.
references. Like they weren't like fully like explained that they came from the Bible, but just like because Shakespeare was like he lived in like the older times, like the only thing that mattered basically was religion.
Yeah.
And so when he wrote his stories, he incorporated a lot of religion into his stories.
And another one that was it was pretty important. It was described when they were describing. I think it was Dromio of Syracuse and the other. I think it was Dromio of Syracuse and Antipholos of Syracuse were describing the prostitute Cordian, and how she's described.
She's talked about like for like a second.
Yeah. Well, she still is referenced to it. She like is seen across the aisle or whatever. And she is described like an angel of light. And this is depicted in Act 4, Scene 3, lines 40 to 50, when Dromio of Syracuse describes her that she is the devil's mom, and she is described as an angel of light. And this alludes to the Bible because the same way, this is the same way that the devil is described in the Bible, as it's described as an angel of light. So it's kind of alluding Cordian to, like basically, like they were saying that she is the devil. So, and this can be seen, like the actual scripture in the Bible is seen in 2 Corinthians 11, verse 14. So.
Alright, so now I'm going to talk about the symbol of money and exchange. And I think that, like, with money and exchange, so it's like the actual symbol of money and, like, the determination to get to the money and the exchange of not just objects, but also something else that I'll be talking about. So I said that money doesn't act as a symbol of being higher than others, but rather it serves as a symbol of bondage for the family, also like the gold chain. Aegeon's life depends on whether or not he can raise the 1,000 marks, and I think that sets up the whole story with money. So
I
think
think that like the Duke like knew as a fact that he was not going to be able to make the 1,000 mark, so she kind of like set him up to fail, and like
Yeah.
money's a big part of the story too.
so and like without the money, he would be unable to search for his sons.
Yeah.
When the subject of the gold chain comes up, there's a great mishap as to who hasn't paid for it. Without this confusion occurring, the twins and Egeon would not have been bonded back together. And I think that's just when the whole thing with gold chain happening and being confused as to like who didn't pay for it and like who has it and just like where it was.
It contributes to the climax of the story.
Yeah. And
There was a lot of like
I mean
references
that
to
like
money
that
exchange.
tied Antipholus of Syracuse and Antipholus of Ephesians together. So and also exchange a scene when the twins start to get mixed up when Adriana exchanges husbands, because I mean I don't really think that has a huge effect, but I think it's another step in leading everyone together, to bond everyone together. When exchange of expensive objects plays a big part of the play, Shakespeare shows that the center of the characters' lives are not things but people, mostly family. And I think that's a good way of putting it because
The gold chain was like
I think Egeon was determined, his mission was to get the 1,000 marks, but I think in getting the money, he was also like finding the family. I mean, obviously that was the whole story, but I feel like the gold chain like played a bigger role than just being something that everyone was looking for, I feel like that was more everyone looking for the family, but the gold chain represented
it was kind of like a symbol referring back to the gold
It was
chain.
also a
too.
symbol of love, because he wanted to give that to his wife.
Yeah.
And it shows that the gold chain, even though it was like so like important, it wasn't as important as like finding their family and stuff, which is obviously regarded more important like at the end because they just kind of forgot about the gold chain, I think, and like everything.
They kind of just like disregarded it at the end.
But I think that money just plays a huge role in the story because that's everyone's motive and just that's everyone's end goal for their character. I think that everyone is really searching for money or like an object to exchange for something. So.
Okay, so the next one is theme of appearance. So the characters' appearances are like the primary source of the actual comedy in comedy of errors because, for example, Antipholus and Dromio twins are constantly being mistaken for each other despite their major differences in their actions and in their personalities. But they're mostly identified by their appearance, which is a method prone to foolishness, therefore leading to comedy for the readers. And it's not the twins' actual like physical appearance that matters in the play, because, for example, another example, Adriana worries about her beauty and her husband no longer caring for her, and Egeon is convinced that his son won't recognize him because he's physically altered by his miserable state. So,
I definitely think that appearance is like the biggest.
Well, because
the most important thing.
That's basically
like,
what
all
the
the
story is being confused as to who's who. And I'm actually surprised, tying to appearance, that there aren't like little things that set them apart that people aren't like, oh, but then again, like they haven't seen them side by side to see what the differences could be. So no one really questions it because they don't know about the
And
others.
thinking about it, Shakespeare didn't even talk about them noticing wearing different outfits. Wouldn't they be wearing different outfits if they were, or
Just being confused as to seeing one person with one outfit, 5 minutes later seeing them another outfit, and then 5 minutes later seeing them with the first outfit.
Why didn't they talk about that in the story?
I just think there wasn't that much complexity when it came to.
I think they kind of, if they had talked about that, then
The story would have been.
It would have been a lot easier to read.
Yeah, it would have been a lot easier to read. And, I think the point of the story was to keep the reader kind of confused.
Yeah.
Or that was kind of one of the.
Which I definitely was confused half the time that I'm reading it.
So I'm not saying my quote now, I'm saying it later, right?
Yeah.
No, we're doing that.
Okay, so then my next theme is kind of similar to appearance, and it's
They kind of go.
it kind of correlates.
together.
So it's identity. So when I say identity, not like appearance where it's physical, the identity, finding their true meaning in life and finding their identity. So this is revealed in comedy.
This one has to do with cosmic irony.
Yeah.
Or
Kind of.
Yeah.
Kind of, yeah.
Or anagnorisis.
Yeah.
That is, it has to do with that.
The most significant identity search belongs to Antipholus, who feels lost and incomplete, and he seeks to fill this void about who he is by getting a family wife and returning to a familiar place. However, ultimately it seems he's seeking to be defined by things outside of himself. This is particularly dangerous because of the issue of mistaken identity. So characters in the play are so positive about the identity of others that they ignore all the hints pointing to how they're mistaken. This habit of being mistaken leads to the characters question their notations of their own identity.
Yeah, which is really surprising.
Yeah.
that
So
they,
this is kind of
question
okay. So
themselves.
we talked about
A
this.
bunch of them question themselves.
Yeah.
I know. Yeah.
So we
I feel like Adriana really questioned
Wait,
herself.
so I have a question. How did Antipholus, the Antipholus of Syracuse, and the Dromio of Syracuse, and then the other set, how did they know that they had a twin in the first place?
I don't think they did.
They didn't know.
But they had to know because Antipholus of Syracuse knew because he was
Searching.
Because he lived with his dad. He lived with Aegeon. When they were first
right, so
kids,
Aegeon
he
was
lived with Aegeon, so he was looking for his twin.
Yeah.
But then the other one, they got separated. They weren't with Abbas, Amelia. Antipholus, they weren't with them. They got separated from their mom.
Yeah.
So who
they
was
were,
with Syracuse?
Syracuse and
Aegeon.
Aegeon were
Okay, and then who was with
Ephesus? I think it was
Ephesus, they
alone?
were.
Because I don't think they knew at all.
Yeah, they were on the side of the boat that was connected with Amelia, but then they got separated. So, yeah.
All right.
Oh, so yeah.
Okay, so this is just quick, but we made an analogy. Sorry.
Analogy.
Analogy. We made an analogy to. Please stop. Analogy to. Okay, we made it to So the identity, I kind of said how like everyone in the story is trying to like find their true identity through their journey of like trying to find each other, and how I said Antipholus of Syracuse feels incomplete and he like tries to like get married and like do all this stuff to and then so my analogy is that like people like kids in high school try to like play sports and join clubs and like make friends to try and like find themselves and understand who they are, and like that's kind of what Antipholus of Syracuse had to do, like get a family and like find like what he loves in order to like pursue himself.
So we're gonna speed up because we don't have much time.
Okay, I'll go really quick on the metaphor.
Yeah.
Okay, so also then like this is kind of another obvious one, like the gold chain and the appearance and stuff, but there are many instances in which animals are metaphorically related to characters. For example, Dromio of Syracuse is an attempt to explain why others whom he does not know should be seen to seem to know him. He thinks that he has been transformed by magic into a donkey or ape. Both animals carry connotations of foolishness, showing that Dromio believes he's being made a fool of, but not also that's common.
Yeah, they're basically saying that they're being just stupid.
Yeah.
So
compare them
Okay,
to
let's
the
go to
animals.
Google now.
Oh wait.
That's
Wait, yeah. So it's kind of a quick, but it's it's kind of an important literary device. So we did the tone and mood too, which the tone obviously is the author's attitude toward the novel, or also like the way that they feel that they're writing, which include, not in this story, but include solemn, witty, crying, grave. The tone in which this story, I believe, is sly and playful. And this is a result of the many recurring events of comedy and confusion that occur throughout the play, such as the incident when the gold chain was sent to the wrong person, and when Antipholus of Syracuse was accused of being Adriana's husband, I believe, but the real one was locked out of the house, which made it really playful, and it was kind of sly comedy as well because there wasn't exactly straight out humor that's seen in most instances
It's
today.
adult humor.
Yeah, it's dull humor.
It was definitely humor that if Mr.
But it was still
Womack, he would laugh at it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was both playful and sly because it was intended by Shakespeare to be completely comical, I think, and so
I think it was comedy back then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
All right.
And the mood and the feeling that we felt when we read it was humorous and hopeful. It was humorous because since there was so much confusion and constantly in disarray, it creates like slight humor. Not because it was like literal jokes, but you just think that like it's just like it's kind of funny how much there's like confusion there is, and it's just like wow, there's like no like hope for like getting like them back together or whatever. So then that creates you like I feel like it makes you hopeful that they're gonna be reunited, or like at some point they're actually gonna end like stopping and like confusion.
It's like the kind of like humor where like you're in a movie and like it's like dramatic irony because like the reader knows like what's going on, but the other character doesn't know what's going on. It's like oh my, it's like that kind of. It's the kind of comedy where it's like oh my gosh. You know that?
Okay, so now we're gonna do our quotes and
Say
say the last word for me first. Paul.
Yeah.
Mostly 30 minutes. Good.
Okay, so I'll go first.
Yeah.
Okay, so I already read like about the like theme of the appearances, but then my specific quote, like, so it was talking about like
Here, wait,
Adriana.
hold on. All you have to do.
that was just your thing.
Oh, okay.
All you
So
have to do is read your quote.
okay. So Adriana says, "Whilst I at home starve for married look, hath homely age rather in beauty look from thy poor cheek, then he hath wasted it. Are my discourages dull and discourse is dull." So she's like pretty much saying
Wait, no.
we just
Take
okay.
it in. Take it in.
Okay, and then the next
Wait.
No, now.
No, now
No,
we have
now
to
we
talk
talk
about it.
Jack, why do you think she picked that quote?
Because I thought that she meant like she like really wants to have like a good looking like self because it makes her like satisfied or like
Image.
yeah she wants to have like a really good self image for herself, like both the way that she sees herself and the way that like other people
husband sees herself.
yeah her husband sees her and so I think that just means that she's like looking at herself and she sees like her cheek and he sees how her husband is like her husband is like completely like just wasted any chance of like I guess her being satisfied by her and so she just like she kind of feels bad and she feels as though she like is dull as a person, and so it kind of affects her self-image as well.
What do you think, Ellen?
Good segue into that. I mean, I think there's not much to it, but like it's really all that you said. But like, I think that especially back then, self-image was a really important thing. You know, like displaying yourself as like perfect and all that. And if you don't feel like you're perfect and like super beautiful, then everyone is gonna like look at you as different, I guess you would say. So, yeah.
So I think that Maddie picked this because this really has to do with identity and image, because she's really questioning herself here, and she's questioning like, why do I look like this? Like she kind of wishes that she could be prettier, and she questions like, does my husband actually love her? Because she thinks that her husband's cheating on her, and she's like, that makes her question herself, and she's like, am I actually worth nothing? Am I actually ugly? And it's like all those things. So I think that this quote is actually really good and like really strong, and explains both of the themes that you had.
Okay, so now I'm just gonna say my identity quote.
No, we will do one for each person.
Oh, okay.
Who
So
wants
you
to go
could
next?
just say I guess why you like actually chose her.
So yeah, why'd you choose it?
Yeah, so I chose the quote because it was just like a super like I don't know what it's just a very obvious quote. Like her literally she says, "Whilst I at home starve for a merry look," like she wants to look like a good it's just like a very like obvious quote. And it also says, "Are my discourages dull?" Like she just is questioning herself a lot in her like true identity. And yeah, I mean it's everything that you guys said.
Okay. So now, Jack.
Sure. So my quote was also by Adriana, which it was in Act 2, Scene 1, lines 119 through 120. It says, "Since that my beauty cannot please his eye, I'll weep, that's what's left away, and weeping die.
What do you think that means?
We gotta absorb.
Oh, absorbing. Sorry, we're absorbing it.
Like SpongeBob.
SpongeBob. Okay, I'll go first. So I think that
Do you want me to go first?
no.
I can go
I'll go first.
Okay.
I'll
go
go
first.
Really short quote, Jack.
I'm sorry.
So I think that it's basically just saying like, since I can't please him, I mean like I'll just be sad about it. Like,
It basically says like if I can't please him, like I'll just like cry about
Yeah,
it. Basically.
exactly. So
And it says in weeping die.
Yeah, I know.
Does she mean that like she literally wants to die?
That
though?
seems like suicidal, like in
I
weeping
know.
die,
Yeah.
like crying while you're like dying.
Yeah.
Maybe like cry herself to death.
Cry yourself to death. That's good.
Probably. That's
I
probably.
mean, that's
what it means.
literally what it is.
Okay, so I think that he picked this, and I also think that it has to do with like almost every single one of the themes, because it has to do with love, it has to do with suffering, and it has to do with identity and
Appearance.
and appearance. So basically, she's suffering because of her like the person that she loves, and it makes her question herself, and it like makes her feel unloved. It makes her feel less about herself, and it really like lowers her self-confidence. And then this quote is also like really strong because she basically wants to talk about like dying.
Yeah.
I just think it's a good quote.
Jack, what does it mean?
So the reason I chose this quote is it kind of relates back to the themes that we showed, where it was like love and then it was suffering. We wrote a couple of themes later, and it shows it kind of was like they were kind of like opposites of each other, because like if you have a lack, like a complete lack of love, then that's literally why she was suffering. Is because she can't be loved as a result of her lack of beauty. So she decides that she will suffer like immensely for it, and it shows the way that she thinks about herself and like her identity as well, and how she like sees herself in her own appearance, and how she thinks that her husband like sees herself, or how she thinks that this is how her husband sees her. So
Okay, do you guys want me to say my logger quote? Or
Say your more.
I mean, we're 32 minutes. So.
They both have the same meaning.
Then just
so.
say the quote. Just
say
say
the
the smaller,
shorter
say the
quote.
smaller one.
Okay, so this is in Act 5, and this is Amelia saying it. And she goes, "Whoever bound him, I will lose his bonds and gain a husband by his liberty. Speak, old Aegeon, if thou be'st the man that hadst a wife once called Amelia, that bore thee at burden 2 fair sons. Oh, if thou be'st the same Aegeon, speak and speak up into the same Amelia." So we're... If y'all want to look at the highlighted.
Good quote, though.
I mean, I feel like we're all kind of just gonna say the same thing.
Who wants to go first?
But I don't know. I just feel like I don't even know.
So
Why do you guys think I picked the quote?
I think it kind of has to do with like.
This is towards the end of the story, and this is when
Oh, it is?
they're all in the town square, and this is all when they meet. If that helps.
Oh, so it's kind of like the Agneris or the Agneris's or whatever when they all meet up. So it's like the Agneris when they all meet up or whatever.
Agnosis.
Yeah, I think he chose that because it's literally like what happened, because they're asking them like if they were actually the same people, basically determining if they were the ones who like.
Yeah.
If this actually is like a meetup, like a huge meetup, because it's like a whole family coming together. So I think that's kind of why.
Yeah.
So.
Ella, do you want to go? Right.
Oh yeah.
Oh, do you want me to say why?
Oh yeah.
I
mean, it's kind of like the same.
I said it because it basically like this big quote showed
Coming together.
It describes
Yeah.
their true identities, and they're coming together, and it led to the resolution. Basically.
Okay. She's so long. Okay. So I know. So why are all of ours Adrian? Anyway, so Adriana said this one. A wretched soul of
You can go.
Okay, anyway. A wretched soul bruised with adversity, we bid be quiet when we hear it cry. Just delete it.
Sorry, sir.
Yeah.
You deleted the quote.
I literally just deleted it. Okay.
Okay.
That wasn't me.
Anyway, it literally says Jack Shannon.
It's
Still not. Oh, okay, just stop. Everyone stop. Just stop. A wretched soul bruised with adversity, we bid be quiet when we hear it cry, but were we burdened with light weight of pain, as much or more we should ourselves absorb.
I feel like SpongeBob when that happens.
Okay.
Who wants to go? And don't read what it says there, because like that's mine. We go off.
So
It's just basically saying how, careless some people are and like how people won't help each other in their time of need.
yeah,
That's
it's kind of like
basically-
it's almost like being hypocritical. Like
Yeah.
the last line says, or much more we should ourselves complain. Like you shouldn't even complain yourself if you can't help other people out when they're complaining. So,
Yeah. What do you think, Benny?
Well, so I mean, yeah, it's pretty. A wretched soul bruised with adversity, be quiet when you hear it. That just means like, no, I know. I'm just saying like when. Like when others are in need. End up reading yours.
So it basically means that when we see others suffering, we don't want to be helped, but when we do,
Others suffering, you don't want to help.
It's like when you see people suffering, you don't care about it enough. So you
but
won't
when
help
you're
them.
suffering,
Yeah.
you want
it's
help.
basically
You're like, I don't understand why no one's helping me.
Yeah,
That's basically
exactly.
what it's saying. Yeah.
So-
and it's like the cycle of like how people suffer, I guess. So that's how Adriana sees it because of how much she suffers.
So yeah.
That's our discussion.
No, we have to end it.